stage decoration, where I'm coming from. Sometimes Christian Tillemann talks about too much decor on stage. Some people say sometimes could be destructive. Sometimes things are changed on stage and I get confused and I forget, well, we have the prompter. Do you think it's
You mean the set?
The set, exactly. Is that a point that you would like to address? Stage decoration, where there's too much on stage, is distracting for you or for the audience, you mean? You think that's a valuable point to comment on, or we can jump into something different?
It's not something I have a problem with. The only issues I have with set design would be if a set design creates an acoustic problem on stage, or there's a lot of requisita on stage, and you have, as a character, you have to do a lot of things with requisita. Then that's can sometimes be a pain when you're also trying to sing and you're multitasking on a major scale. That can be sometimes a challenge. Sometimes they can be the hardest things. Can be those sort of props, or the set, or getting through a doorway that sticks, or a bicycle that you can't do the stand. Last performance of Siegfried here, I have as Wagner, I come and have a little picnic in the third act, and I have a baguette. Bless them, the requisita here, I said, can I make sure you get a fresh baguette for me? And they got an onion flavoured baguette. So when I broke it and sniffed it on stage, all I got was onion, which is quite funny. And it was just a mistake. But I did ask them to make sure we could just get a plain baguette. So those sort of things can happen with props and things like that. And also, for example, in Siegfried here, we do the third act in front of the Iron Curtain. And acoustically that changed. So a little bit of time in stage rehearsals. That took a little bit of time to get used to. That the acoustic and what one hears is a little bit different. And as Wanderer, I have to obviously, in most productions, wear a hat. And I don't like singing in hats. It just changes my sort of acoustic feeling. But if those are my biggest problems, then I think they really are quite minor in the grand scheme of things.
Okay. Now, quite the opposite. Concert performances, as opposed to stage ones. You view some pros and cons. Do you like them? Do you dislike them because you don't have the stage decoration?
I haven't done Wagner in concert. Okay. I can't comment on Wagner particularly. I don't do a lot of concert performances of opera, maybe 2 or 3 in my whole career, so it's really not a sort of thing I do much. I like to be, whatever it is, I'm always the character, whether I'm standing there in a suit or whether I'm actually on stage with a set and everything and the orchestra's in a pit. I always believe you have to be the character. And it's but it's always a little bit awkward when you're standing in a concert, when you've got colleagues either side of you, but you're interacting with them. How do you play that? I think, for me, I like the sort of idea of the sort of slightly staged concert, where there is a little bit of work going on. The question is, again, with concert, is that a concert with the score or without the score? Sometimes you might do a concert where, I remember doing Guntram from Strauss in concert in Dresden. And it's such a sort of unknown piece that we were all with the books. But if you did Siegfried now, you probably wouldn't want to use I wouldn't want maybe to use a score, because that's music stand, and the score acts as a little bit of a barrier to the audience, I think. So, and also you do, I think, need to have the surtitles, or if you're doing a concert performance as well, because you haven't got the action, you haven't got the Fafner, the dragon type thing appearing, for example, or in Siegfried or in Rheingold. You haven't got the dragon when Albrecht changes. That's hard to pull off in a concert. So, yeah, I prefer always prefer a staged performance.
butterfly question comes from the difficulties or the challenges imposed on the singers, because you don't have the orchestra in the orchestra pit. You have it on stage, and that's much more silent.
Yeah, but that's not. Yes, it is, but that's not. I almost think as a singer, that's not something you can. You've got enough to worry about. That's not your job. The balance. You can't suddenly say, "I've got to sing louder because I've got the orchestra behind me and not in the pit." No, you can't do that. You're not going to beat. You're not going to win against a Wagner orchestra. Full stop. So that is always an issue. Yeah, I'm sure it's an issue. Yeah.
Certainly, the conductor's role will be tremendous in order to control the balance, so that you are not.
It's much harder. Yeah.
Okay. Conductors. We talked about this, and I found your comments in Leipzig so interesting when we were talking about Professor Schürmann and the requirements of certain conductors. 1, 2. You remember, you sing of 1. I tell you when you have to do it, and therefore ask the question, requirements or habits of conductors that present a particular challenge to you or relief. For example, text sung 1-to-1 with the notes of the score, not allowing you your own freedom for phrasing.
Yes, I think that there are conductors who will want, as we spoke about before, that will want Wagner done very strictly in the rhythm that Wagner did, and keeping in the time and not changing, almost like a metronome in many ways. And there are other conductors who will take a much more relaxed approach, and there are others in the middle. There are some conductors who will just sort of put the chord down, for example, in the sort of what is effectively sort of accompanied recitative in Wagner a lot. They'll just put chords down when they need to, and not beat every single beat of the bar. And as I said, there are others who will beat every beat. Look, I think it presents a challenge as for the singer to deal with one and then deal with the other. I think what's required again is communication. I think what's required is a mutual trust and an openness and a willingness to work together. That would be my philosophy about any sort of collaboration between a conductor and a singer, or a stage director and a singer. The whole process needs to be collaborative, needs to be about mutual respect. I think that's the way I try and live my life generally anyway, but I think that should also translate to the opera theatre. And I think that, of course, there are some conductors who are very strong and very determined that it's what they want. But I think even in that situation, it's about trying to understand what they want, having the time, and making sure that you know that's the wish of that conductor. How can we make that work? How can I make it work for me? Because it's not about, if the conductor wants to beat every bar, fine. But every beat, what can I then do to them? What can I then, without the maybe freedom I get from another conductor, what can that bring to the piece? It's always about thinking about it. They're asking it for a reason. Why do they want it? What do they feel that it brings, and how can I make that happen? Yeah.
Well, now, to conclude more or less, Wotan, that's the role I saw you for the first time, quite impressive. But I asked this question because I've seen Wotans who had to sing 3 consecutive roles in one single ring, for example, in Budapest. That demands an enormous adaptability, because, as I put it here, I hope I'm right, because it's a sort of chameleon's performance. You start as a political animal or something like that in Rhein, the guy who negotiates stuff like that. Then you go into the husband, the unfaithful husband, the frustrated father in Valkyrie, and then you go into an anonymous individual in Siegfried as a wanderer. How do you manage that if you have to sing those roles? Is that a challenge for you, or is it in yourself?
When I first started to sing the Wotans, then I was very determined that when I first sang Wotan, I wanted to do a whole ring cycle as a new production. I had been offered a sort of like a Wiederaufnahme of Walküre with only like 3 weeks rehearsal or something, and I turned it down because I wanted to do the journey of all three. And so, and I do the whole, all three here. So, and that with Dietrich Hilsdorf here, then it was his also, I think he directed Walküre before, but not the others. So it was a sort of journey of discovery, and then as to how what is that character of Wotan, and maybe I play him different to other people. I definitely see it as rather than as a chameleon, as an evolution. I see it as a journey between the three operas. So I don't actually find it that tricky. I much prefer to sing a cycle than to sing the opera as an individual piece, where you just come to it without, particularly if you sing Walküre or like today Siegfried, you're coming to it without having sung Rheingold and Walküre in the week before. So you have to try and remember that journey. We have a few sort of physical leitmotifs in the character here that repeat. So there are certain gestures, there are certain things I do in each opera that I do. That's like habits of Wotan as a character, which gives me a little bit of continuity from a physicality acting point of view. But the text is so rich, and you just have to just have to look at the text to find out what this man's thinking and what situation he's found himself in. I think Wagner is very clear about that. And I also think of it as a sort of life journey. I think that although they are supposed to be immortal in some ways, I still think there is growth in the characters. So the Rheingold Wotan for me is much more that, 20, 30 something aggressive, pushy entrepreneur. I see it from a business point of view a little bit. An entrepreneur, but also he has that sort of arrogance of youth about him, that he can take on the world and win, and not to worry about things. Things will sort themselves out. It's that sort of Elon Musk sort of type of approach almost. And then you have in Walküre, then the sort of reality starts to hit home. So you become a man of commitment and a man of that is bound up by the actions that have caught up on him. So that is a very tortured opera for Wotan, very much so. But then I see Siegfried as an extension of that older man that is now, if you look, I look at him almost like the grandfather of a self-made man of a business that he's built up all himself and has to pass it over to the children or the grandchildren, but doesn't really want to let go because he's got he's so invested in such an ego in it. But he has to let go. He has to. So, but he still wants to be in control. He's still trying to be in control without being in control. So I understand that very much from a business sort of perspective. I see it all the time. In my previous life as a businessman, I saw people like that all the time. So I enjoy it. I find that journey quite, I identify with it and I can relate to it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Not a question, a comment, but to me a quite relevant one. Kurt Moll. I think I made this remark to you in Leipzig. And this is something that I really appreciate in what you're just saying. I mean, understanding the text, understanding what the guy wants to say. Kurt Moll said, if you want to sing Wagner, you need singers who think, who really understand the whole thing. It's not just text, there's the profound meaning, there's philosophy into the whole thing. And that's what makes good Wotans to be so good, because they understand what they're doing and that transpire, that can go to the public, to the listeners.
But I think also that one of my philosophy of singing is that the text has to be, the text was written by Wagner, but it has to be mine. I have to own the text first before it comes out. So I have to own, so I see my process as this, if you like. If I can just demonstrate how I sing, if you like, with one hand, it's that. I have the text. It has to come, but the text is not intellectual. It's not. This is an interesting thing because that balance between intellect and soul. So the brain and so one's brain and one's emotional center. And to make it real, I think it has to be connected to the emotional center. So, of course, you can sing a song or sing an opera and not be connected to the character and to the emotional center and still be Simon singing. You know, I don't want. I really believe that the best performances are when we as individuals get our egos and get ourselves out the way, and we are just vessels, if you like, to transmit the meaning of the Wagner text. That's why, I mean, just a quick one. We talked earlier about what appeals to me about Wagner is that Wagner doesn't really have those moments for the diva. You know, when I see, what I mean by that is, if you take Tosca, where the tenor, after singing Luce van Stelle, might have to sing it again. That's never going to happen in a Wagner opera. And I like that, because I think the whole idea of having to repeat an aria, that whole tradition for me is a different sort of opera to the opera I want. I want opera to be a musical drama. And I don't want it to just be like a gala concert. I want it to move me and to take me somewhere else. And that's why I always go into that sort of German Wagner repertoire, Strauss. They do that. Of course, there's time for Puccini and there's time for Verdi and time for all that as well. I don't want to put them down in any way, but it's different. It's almost a different art form in some ways. When you get or the tenor, I'm not having just to go against tenors, but when the tenor holds the Vittoria in Tosca and for too long just to show off, that doesn't work for me as an artist, I have to say.
Brilliant. I almost feel that I don't have to ask you any questions, but anyway, as a closing remark, is there something anecdotal or something curious that you would like to comment on?
I don't know, because I was thinking about your question about an anecdote. I can only tell you really about my first, when I came to Germany, I came on Fest in Dortmund, and my first Wagner role in Germany, in German, because I'd done them in English before, was Donner in Rheingold. And so it was a Wiederaufnahme of Rheingold in Dortmund and the director was Christina Mielitz, who was a very well-known Regie Theater director. And so I looked at the score. I remember looking at the score and seeing the page that Donner came in. It says entrance Donner in the score or something. And so I prepared it from that point onwards. And I had a one-to-one rehearsal with her, and for 2.5 hours. And it was the most wonderful and educational experience, because I realized that in her production, Donna came in with the whole family. The family were there right from the start, so that I hadn't looked at that. So I was very badly prepared. So all that section before the Donna first sings, I hadn't looked at, and I didn't know what it all meant, and because I didn't think I was going to be on stage. So I learned very quickly indeed, that you need to know everything. And she ran me around the room saying, then you go over here, and then she would run over there, and then you go with no other characters, and then you say to Wotan, so where is Wotan? Oh, he's over there. It was a crazy rehearsal, but I learned so much from her, because Dortmund was like a finishing school for me. So I learned so much from Christina Mielitz in Wagner, because we did the whole ring there. So I did the Donner, I did the Alberich and Siegfried and Gunther in Götterdämmerung with her. And then I did Herr in Lohengrin there with her. So I did quite a bit of Wagner in my time there, and learnt a lot. Yeah.
Simon, thank you very much.
Thank you.